The council chamber was a cathedral of light and stone, vast enough to swallow a human stadium whole. Marble-like pillars of living crystal arched overhead, refracting the glow of a dying blue supergiant visible through the great panoramic wall. Delegates from 23 civilizations sat in ascending tiers, their eyes, compound, faceted, luminous, or shadowed, locked on the circle at the center. Captain Elias Rourke stood alone there, one man in a charcoal uniform cut with precise lines. His hands rested lightly behind his back. He could feel the temperature difference. The air was cooler here, deliberately so. The center dais was for those on trial, whether for crimes or declarations. The Threx delegation's table rose at the far end, a dais within the dais. Supreme Archon Velshar stepped forward, his segmented exoskeleton catching the light like obsidian polished to a mirror's edge. The movement of his mandibles made a dry clicking that echoed faintly. "By lawful decree of the Galactic Council," Velshar said, voice low and metallic, "the species known as human is hereby declared hostile to the order of the galaxy. You will surrender your fleets, your disputed territories, and submit to reparations. Refusal will be met with annihilation." A hum of shifting voices moved through the tiers. Elias tilted his head slightly. "That's quite an introduction," he said, tone even. "Do you usually start negotiations with extermination, or is this a special occasion?" Velshar's mandibles flexed what humans had learned was Threxian disdain. "You misunderstand. There will be no negotiations. Only compliance, or your extinction will serve as example." Elias glanced around at the other delegates, reading the subtle body language. The tall, antlered Urati avoided his gaze. The gelatinous Torv swayed slowly in their tanks. The insectoid Shakera tilted their heads in curiosity. Half the chamber was watching Velshar. The other half was watching him. "An example," Elias repeated, "to frighten others who might what? Think for themselves? Question trade monopolies? Resist border seizures?" Velshar's mandibles snapped shut with a click. "To preserve stability. You are a contagion of unpredictability." "Unpredictable," Elias said softly. "That's one way to describe surviving against impossible odds. I call it adaptability." A ripple of sound moved through the room, some of it disapproval, some reluctant amusement. Elias didn't let it linger. "You speak of stability, Archon, but what you really mean is control. You control the trade lanes. You control the flow of resources. You control which species rise and which stay at the bottom. Until now." Velshar's voice hardened. "Enough. You will return to your world and prepare for surrender." Elias let the silence stretch just long enough to become noticeable, then smiled faintly. "Is that all?" The hum in the chamber stilled. Velshar's compound eyes narrowed, black mirrors catching the council's light. Elias turned his head toward the speaker of the council, a slender being of liquid metal whose voice was an almost musical vibration. "The Terran Interstellar Authority acknowledges receipt of the Archon's position. We will respond in kind." Velshar's claws scraped the edge of his dais. "Respond? You will be destroyed." "Maybe," Elias said, "or maybe history will record today as the moment the galaxy learned to stop making that mistake." The speaker's harmonic tone cut through the tension. "The matter is recorded. Proceedings adjourned." The chamber lights dimmed fractionally, signaling the end of session. Delegates began to file out. Voices a low susurrus of alien languages. Velshar remained standing, his gaze fixed on Elias with an intensity that could have burned through steel. Elias walked the narrow path out of the circle. His pace was unhurried, his posture unbowed. He didn't look back. The diplomatic flagship Tia's Vanguard slid through the cold between stars, its matte black hull swallowing starlight. No banners, no running lights. Only the faint shimmer of shield harmonics betrayed its outline. Captain Elias Rourke stood in the command observation lounge, a circular space with panoramic glass wrapping above and below. Out here, the galaxy was an ocean of silent fire. Somewhere beyond that darkness, Threxian patrols prowled, eager to be the first to claim a Terran kill. Commander Imani Sato entered without ceremony, a tablet in her hand. "Phase 1 assets are in position," she said. 3 teams in Threx-controlled space. 2 near their agricultural worlds, 1 embedded in their central freight hub. Elias nodded. The freight hub's priority. Starve their fleets before they burn fuel. Her mouth twitched in a hint of a smile. Already set. Coordinated strikes within 72 hours. The Threx won't see it as war. They'll think it's an accident. For now. Later. In the Vanguard secure briefing chamber, Elias sat across from Admiral Chun, patched in via holographic projection. The Admiral's stern face flickered faintly in the low light. The Council's announcement spread faster than expected, Chun said. Half the neutral sectors are watching for your next move. We can't afford to look defensive. I don't intend to, Elias replied. We'll give them something to talk about without firing a single shot. Yet. Chen's eyes narrowed. The word yet suggests you're planning to change that. When the time comes, Elias said, we don't win by meeting the Threx head-on. We make them bleed where their armor's thin. Chun grunted approval. Make sure your moves don't push the neutrals into Velshar's arms. They'll push themselves, Elias said, unless we give them a reason not to. The ship's hum was constant, a low vibration underfoot. Elias made his way to the intelligence deck, where a wall of hollow screens displayed shifting tactical maps. Dotted lines marked shipping lanes, resource routes, and troop deployments. On the far right, blinking red nodes marked planned disruptions. Sato pointed to one node pulsing brighter than the rest. This is Jari's, for Threx's main grain processing station. Supplies half the Dominion's fleets. Our people planted a maintenance override last month. Elias studied the readout. Trigger it during peak processing. Make it look like a reactor fault. Delay repairs with forged safety protocols. Keep them docked and hungry. Her eyes were steady. Understood. By the 3rd day, the Vanguard was in deep void, close enough to intercept encrypted bursts from covert teams. Messages came in fragments. Docking seals in place. Control override confirmed. Evacuation underway. Each one marking another wound in Threx supply chains. Elias kept his focus on the bigger game. The damage itself was important, but the timing mattered more. Each strike had to coincide with council chatter. Rumors of instability traveled faster than fleets. That evening, he attended a private holo session with 2 delegates from minor council species, the scaled, soft-spoken Thali and the crystalline Vasher. Both had voted neutral during Velshar's declaration. The Athali delegate leaned forward, frill-like gills fluttering. Your people are being reckless. Reckless, Elias said, is letting someone declare your extinction and not doing something about it. Vasher's voice was like wind through glass. Velshar claims you have already escalated. Velshar claims many things. Elias said, ask yourself why the Dominion is quietly moving patrol fleets away from your borders. He's afraid of something, and it's not just us. They exchanged a glance. Neither committed support, but neither withdrew into hostility. That was enough for now. The first real test came a day later. The Vanguard intercepted a priority Threx transmission, encrypted, but within reach of Terran decryption tools. Sato ran the codebreak, and the message spilled across the holo in jagged Threx script. Patrol Group 6 has intercepted Terran supply convoy near Grid 8. Engaging. Elias frowned. We don't have a convoy near Grid 8. Not ours, Sato said. One of ours. The difference was deliberate. The convoy in question was a decoy, a cluster of unarmed freighters broadcasting false cargo signatures and automated distress beacons, part of Phase 1's misinformation web. Inside their holds, nothing but chaff and signal repeaters. Elias tapped the display. Patch me to Fleet Command. Tell them to stand down. Let the Threx have their victory. Sato hesitated. They'll parade it as proof they're winning. That's the point, Elias said. They'll waste time celebrating while we hit them somewhere they can't see. Hours later, the Threx broadcast triumphant holos to the Council, grainy footage of their warships corralling Terran supply ships. Velshar himself appeared in the feed, mandibles spread in what passed for a grin. Elias watched in silence, then looked to Sato, signaled Jari's for light the fuse. The report came 6 hours later. Jari's For's reactor had malfunctioned during peak output, flooding the station with containment alarms. Automated lockdown procedures kept the station sealed, stranding for fully loaded grain freighters in dock. Threx military fleets in 2 sectors immediately reported rationing measures. Sato brought the data slate to him in the observation lounge. It worked. It's a start, Elias said, scrolling through the updates. Velshar will be looking for retaliation. Let him. The more he focuses on us, the less he sees the cracks opening under him. That night, if night could exist aboard a ship perpetually in the void, Elias stood at the viewport again. The stars wheeled slowly as the Vanguard adjusted course. Somewhere ahead, Phase 1's last target waited. A Threxian communications relay that connected 3 outer sectors to the core. A surgical disruption there could isolate entire fleets. Sato's voice came from the doorway. Relay team is ready. They'll move at the next patrol shift. Elias nodded. Once that's done, we wait. Let the Dominion stew. Give the neutrals time to feel the tremors. She leaned against the frame. And then, Elias said, we give Velshar reason to wonder if he started a war he can't win. Mini cliffhanger. The secure comm station chimed. A priority burst from one of the covert teams scrolled onto the display. Target compromised. Possible leak. Extraction uncertain. The TS Vanguard's war room glowed in shades of deep amber. The hollow map in the center pulsing with active sectors. Red spheres marked Threx patrol movements. Smaller, flickering icons represented Terran assets, most of them invisible to official records. Elias Rourke stood at the edge of the table, reading the latest encrypted bursts. 3 Phase 1 strikes had succeeded. The 4th, the relay team, was silent. That silence pressed to the back of his mind like a storm front. Commander Sato entered, face unreadable. We confirmed the leak. The Threx intercepted 2 of our operatives during the relay breach. 1 dead, 1 unaccounted for. Elias didn't look up immediately. The survivor? Unknown. Could be in custody. Could be moving under deep cover. No way to tell yet. He exhaled through his nose. Velshar will use it. News traveled quickly through the Council's undercurrents. By the next session, the Threx delegation had already presented evidence of Terran sabotage, edited hollow footage of human operatives planting charges, without the context of who fired first. Velshar stood in the center circle, mandibles clicking in sharp rhythm. Here is your proof. Humanity pretends to speak for peace while waging war in the shadows. This is why they must be crushed before the infection spreads. The speaker's metallic voice asked, Captain Rourke, your response? Elias stepped into the light. My response is simple. If we wanted War Archon, you would not be standing here. You'd be digging survivors out of what's left of your shipyards. A ripple moved through the chamber. Half shock, half grim appreciation. Velshar's eyes flared with reflected light. You admit to violence. I admit, Elias said evenly, that humanity does not wait to be slaughtered. He let the words hang, then turned to the speaker. I also note the Archon's footage contains no timestamp, no chain of custody, and no neutral verification. Unless the Threx Dominion has suddenly embraced transparency, I suggest the Council treat this proof as what it is, propaganda. The Vashur delegate's crystalline body chimed faintly. The point is noted. Velshar's voice cut low. You play for time. It will not save you. Elias smiled faintly. It's not time I'm playing for. Back aboard the Vanguard, Elias studied the playback of the session. Every twitch of alien body language, every moment of hesitation, every glance between neutral factions was a data point. The Shakara were shifting. They hadn't supported humanity yet, but their silence toward Velshar had been noticeable. Sato stepped in with a fresh report. Outer listening post-Beta 7 is gone. No survivors. Threx fleet used stealth insertion. Plasma torpedoes at point-blank range. Elias's jaw tightened. That was one of ours. They knew exactly where to hit, she said, which means they have eyes somewhere inside our network. By the following day, the Vanguard secure comms lit with direct feed from Admiral Chen. You've got a kill order on your head, Chen said, without preamble. Our sources confirm Velshar authorized it personally. He's not hiding it. Either he wants it known. Elias leaned back slightly in his chair. A personal touch. I should be flattered. This isn't a game, Chen said. If you set foot in Threx space, you won't leave it. I don't intend to, Elias said, but I want him to think I might. Chen's brow furrowed. You're baiting him. I'm letting him bait himself, Elias corrected. He's too focused on me. That's leverage. The next council session brought an unexpected shift. The Athali delegate requested the floor and spoke of concerns regarding Dominion fleet expansion near neutral borders. It wasn't open support for humanity, but it was a crack in Velshar's image of inevitability. Elias met the Athali's gaze across the chamber, a brief nod passing between them. Velshar, sensing the shift, turned his attack sharper. Do not be fooled by Terran words. They are predators in disguise. Elias replied without looking at him. And some of us remember when the Threx called themselves liberators. Gasps followed. The reference was surgical. Velshar's dominion had liberated 3 worlds in the last century, stripping them for resources. The history was known but rarely named aloud in the chamber. The Vasher delegate's crystalline tones rang. Captain Rourke's point is historically accurate. Perhaps we should avoid selective memory. Velshar's mandibles snapped shut. Later, in the privacy of the Vanguard strategy room, Sato approached the table with a small, encrypted chip. This came through back channels, she said, from someone calling themselves a Shar's voice. Claims to represent a dissident faction inside the Threx military. Elias turned the chip between his fingers. And they're reaching out to us? Offering intelligence. Says Velshar is consolidating his power too aggressively, making enemies a home. Elias placed the chip into the console. Lines of text scrolled across the holo. Fleet schedules, supply shortages, internal disputes. If it was genuine, it was a treasure. Sato's voice was quiet. Could be bait. Of course it could, Elias said. That's why we test it. If it's real, we have our opening. 3 days later, confirmation came from an unexpected place. The Shakara delegation sent a discreet message. Information verified. Threx High Command split. Velshar overextends. Elias leaned over the table, watching the slow tilt of power in the holomap. This isn't just war anymore, he said. It's a knife fight in the dark, and Velshar's surrounded by people with knives. Sato folded her arms. And you're planning to hand them sharper ones. He didn't answer, but the faint smile was enough. That evening, Elias recorded a short message to be routed through back channels to Velshar's own intelligence bureau. Archon, I hear you're having internal difficulties. I'd say I'm sorry to hear that, but we both know I'm not. Perhaps you should look closer to home before you worry about me. No signature, no location stamp, just a message, slipped into the bloodstream of Threx communications where it would fester. Mini cliffhanger. Hours later, the Vanguard intercepted a burst from one of the covert teams. Threx flagship sighted en route to Zereth Prime. Velshar aboard. Unknown escort strength. Elias looked out into the void, his reflection hard in the glass. He's coming to finish this himself. The TAS Vanguard floated in the black like a shadow, her hull darkened for combat stealth. The void ahead shimmered faintly with sensor ghosts, Velshar's flagship Krefvor and his escorts, cutting across the sector toward Zereth Prime. Elias Rourke stood on the bridge, watching the tactical display bloom with red contacts. 32 Threx warships, 12 Terran vessels, outnumbered nearly 3-1. Admiral Chen's voice came through crisp from the TIS Resolute. They'll expect us to retreat toward the station. They want to pin us against Zereth's defense grid, which is why, Elias said, we're not giving them the chance. Chen grunted, understood, signaled the fleet. The Terran ships broke formation, scattering into what looked, on sensors, like chaotic retreat. In reality, each vessel moved to predetermined coordinates, slingshotting around the system's minor moons and debris fields. Drone swarms launched in all directions, some broadcasting false warp signatures, others pulsing random EM noise to blind Threx targeting. On the Krefvor, Velshar's tactical officers reported multiple Terran drives in every vector. His voice cut through the din They are trying to confuse us. Maintain pursuit on the largest cluster. That largest cluster was bait, a trio of lightly armed frigates dragging a cloud of decoy drones behind them. Back aboard the Vanguard, Commander Sato monitored the unfolding chaos. Velshar pulling 20 ships toward the bait group. That leaves his flagship with minimal screening. Elias didn't take his eyes off the tactical feed. Deploy the spear. At once, 3 Terran cruisers erupted from behind a drifting asteroid. Their drives masked until the last second. They cut a direct vector toward the Krefvor. Missile hatches already open. The first volley wasn't meant to kill. It was a curtain of high-velocity chaff and ion disruptors. The Threx escorts scrambled to block, their formation fracturing. In the Krefvor's command pit, alarms painted the air in red glyphs. Velshar's mandibles clicked sharply. Titan formation. Shield the core. But the Terran strategy wasn't about closing for a slugging match. Instead, their cruisers veered away, looping in wide arcs. The Threx pursued, leaving the flagship's rear quarter exposed. That was when Phase 2 began. Deep within the chaos, a stealth corvette emerged from sensor shadow. The TIS Ghostrunner, hull-coated in adaptive camouflage, slid into the flagship's blind spot. Inside, a strike team of 8 moved through cramped corridors, weapons maglocked to armor. Their objective was simple: breach plant charges and get out. The corvette's docking latches bit into the Krefvor's hull with a dull thud. Cutting torches hissed. A circular section of armor fell inward, and the strike team flowed through like smoke. On the Vanguard's bridge, Sato's voice was low. Insertion confirmed. We've lost visual on the team. Elias nodded once. Keep the pressure on Velshar. The longer he's looking outward, the better their odds. The battle outside raged in fragmented bursts. Terran ships darted between gravity wells, using the moon's pull to whip themselves into attack runs before vanishing into censored dead zones. Threx gunners fired into empty space more often than at actual targets. On the Krefvor, Velshar paced a command dais, watching his tactical screens bleed red contacts. They are not here to win this fight, he muttered. They are here to... The deck shuddered violently. Internal alarm screamed. A damaged officer's voice cracked. Hull breach on Deck 19. Unknown boarding signatures. Velshar's mandibles flared. Seal all decks below Command 3. Flood the breach zones with no gas. Inside those breach zones, the strike team moved fast, sealed helmets hissing against the sudden vacuum. The no gas wasn't lethal, but it slowed movement. They worked in pairs, one setting charges, the other covering. Their target, the flagship's primary power cores. At the final junction, they encountered Threx security, heavily armored, four-limbed, with weapons that spat molten shards. The corridor became a staccato nightmare of flash and smoke. 2 Terrans went down, their armor pierced, but the charges were placed. Back on the Vanguard, Sato's console pinged. Detonation signal armed. Team is pulling out, but comms are patchy. Elias's gaze stayed locked on the flagship icon. Tell them they have 90 seconds. No more. Velshar gripped the edge of the tactical console, rage boiling. His voice cut through his officer's panic. We will break them here. Focus all fire on. The explosion was silent in the void, but the light was blinding. The Krefvor's shields flared, failed, and a plume of debris erupted from her midsection. Systems went dark across her hull. Half her escorts broke off to cover her retreat. Elias exhaled slowly. Signal the fleet. Withdraw on Vector 3. Chen's voice came over comms. We're not pressing the advantage? Not yet, Elias said. We've done what we came for. Velshar's flagship is wounded. His pride's in tatters, and the Council will have questions. As the Terran ships peeled away into the dark, the Vanguard sensors tracked the crippled flagship limping toward Threx space. Sato glanced at Elias. Strike team? He shook his head. No confirmation. They went dark after the blast. Silence hung between them for a moment. They knew the odds. Elias said finally, hours later, alone in his quarters. Elias replayed the battle in his mind. Not the volleys and maneuvers, but Velshar's expression when the blast tore through his ship. That half-second of disbelief was worth the risk. But he also knew Velshar wouldn't stop. The next encounter would be personal. Mini cliffhanger. A secure burst arrived on the Vanguard's encrypted channel. The sender code matched one of the missing operatives. Message. Objective complete. Extraction in progress. Rendezvous location. Aboard the Krefvor. Elias stared at the text. They were still inside the flagship. The Galactic Council chamber was unrecognizable from the day war had been declared. Then, it had been a spectacle of arrogance. Banners unfurled, the air humming with smug certainty. Now, the same space carried the taut stillness of a hunting ground after the predator has passed. Rows of alien delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats, the polished obsidian floor reflecting their unease. Every sound was magnified. The faint clink of armor plates, the softest of translator device activating, the low, nervous rustle of wings from a Varic envoy. Jonathan Hale stood at the center dais, not in the tailored diplomatic suit of earlier meetings, but in the same functional combat blacks he'd worn aboard the Resolute Dawn. No medals, no ribbons, no ornaments. Just a human standing alone in the light. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. You asked for war, he began, his tone even almost conversational. You thought you'd be fighting a species desperate to prove itself. Instead, you found out what happens when a species fights for keeps. No delegate interrupted. Not the Corthan admiral whose fleet had been broken in the first week. Not the Seleth prime minister whose planetary shield grids had crumbled in days. And certainly not the Nalketh warlord who sat rigid, his eyes fixed anywhere but on Hale. We didn't want this, Hale continued. We didn't want your fleets burning, your colonies in ruins, your supply lines choked with debris. But you insisted. You thought human diplomacy was a weakness. You mistook restraint for fear. A flicker of tension passed through the chamber. Several alien translators hesitated, as if their operators couldn't believe the directness of the words they were transmitting. Hale's gaze shifted deliberately to the throne-like seat at the far end, now empty, its occupant gone. The Council King, the one who had signed the war declaration with theatrical flourish, now existed only as an unspoken absence. Hale didn't mention him. He didn't have to. What you don't understand, Hale said, is that we don't fight for glory. We don't fight to expand. We fight because once the line is crossed, once a choice is forced on us, there's only one acceptable ending. He let that settle, scanning the rows. The ending where our people come home alive. The silence deepened, a living thing pressing against every delegate in the room. Somewhere near the back, a small recording drone retracted its lens with a soft click, as though even it understood the finality of the moment. Hale took a single step forward. This war ends today. Not because you surrendered. You already did, whether you signed the documents or not. It ends because humanity has decided it ends. He reached into his pocket and produced a thin metal disc, no larger than his palm, unadorned, but instantly recognizable to anyone with a military background. An encoded ceasefire key. Without ceremony, he placed it on the central podium. It clinked against the surface, the sound sharp in the charged air. You'll rebuild. We'll watch. You'll reconsider your notions about what humanity is, and we'll make certain your memory doesn't fade. His eyes narrowed slightly. Because if it does, we'll have this conversation again. And you know how it ends. For a moment, no one moved. Then, one by one, the alien delegates rose from their seats. Not in defiance, in acknowledgement. Some inclined their heads. Others folded their limbs in the gestures of respect from their worlds. None spoke. Hale didn't wait for ceremony. He turned and walked from the dais, his footsteps echoing with deliberate calm. At the chamber's edge, Commander Alvarez was waiting, her face unreadable. "It's done," she asked quietly. "It's done," Hale replied. "Think they'll stay quiet?" "They'll try," he said, glancing back at the still-frozen council. "But if they don't, they'll remember we don't knock twice." They stepped out into the pale light of the docking concourse, where the Resolute Dawn loomed scarred, battle-tested, but intact. As the boarding ramp extended, Hale cast one last look at the skyline of the council's world. Towering spires still stood, but the faint traces of smoke in the distance were reminders that war had come here too. Alvarez followed his gaze. You ever wonder if we went too far? Hale considered. No, I wonder if we went far enough. They boarded in silence. Moments later, the ship's engines rumbled to life, their vibration carrying a weight far heavier than noise. The council planet fell away behind them, shrinking into the black. Somewhere deep in that black, other civilizations were watching, some with fear, some with calculation, and somewhere, in places yet untouched by human presence, the next challenge was already forming. But for now, humanity had spoken, and the galaxy had listened.